Right. Man, it really is weird without the fan on. I'm used to always having the fan on. It kind of creates like, I don't know, like an ambience of sort, you know? It's kind of like background noise, essentially. It's like background noise, and it also keeps the room a bit cooler, you know? Because that is just like, oh, it's freaking warm, man. Nope, I haven't got that one. Yeah, that one. The Hoja family is well known. Why did I try to read it in such a stupid way? Happens, you know. The Hoja family is well known for going against the whole village during the damn conflicts. Both the husband and the wife were rather aggressive, and they fought a fierce battle, especially against the Sonozaki family. Though the whole village treated them coldly, the husband and wife didn't really care and kept on fighting. In a way, they were extremely strong-willed people. I'm sure their children had to go through a lot because of them, though. Satoko and Satoshi were treated coldly by the villagers as well. That's the point. It's like we've seen how, you know, the villagers react to Satoko, but what about Satoshi? I think we've seen it in the previous arc. Yeah, we definitely have. But, you know, we haven't seen it in this arc yet. In addition to that, Satoko-chan and her stepfather didn't get along, so their stress levels must have reached their limits. Oh, it's Irie's perspective. Because I'm the director of the local clinic, a well-respected member of society, people usually tell me a lot of things. So I was aware of the treatment they were receiving even before I met them. I met Satoshi-kun first. Satoshi-kun came to the clinic because he felt ill from too much stress. I don't want to be dealing with that, Satoshi. In his house, you know, a serious thing. He must have thought he had a cold. When I examined him, he even told me that. But hearing his repeated sighs and by seeing the exhausted look in his eyes, I knew right away it wasn't just a simple cold. Medication would heal his symptoms, but that'd only be a temporary measure. The only way to truly cure him would be to change his living environment. But that was easier said than done. He was surrounded by tangled and complicated relationships with the village and his family. So just resting for a few days and taking some medication wouldn't do. Time was the only thing that could ease off the cold treatment from the villagers, but we were talking a very, very long time. That's why I felt I had to be their first ally in this village, so I could rescue them. I couldn't do anything about his stressful environment, but I could try to diminish the anxiety. So I thought the best way was to teach him how to vent his stress. And playing sports is the best way to do that, so that's how that came into play then. So I asked him to join the junior baseball team that I coach. As a researcher, I devote most of my time to Higurashi syndrome, but I too need to do something else to relax. I used to play baseball, so I decided to coach the local kids team. After a while, the children in Higurashi started their own baseball team, and somehow I became their coach. Doctors can't provide health just by giving medication. You need a sound mind and a sound body. I believe health can be maintained through sports as well. You know, it's kind of counterintuitive in a way. It's like it depends on the sport, really, because you can get injured doing sports. But our team needed more people, so I thought of asking Satoshi-kun to join. Being a bookworm, Satoshi-kun wasn't interested in playing sports. He wasn't sure how joining the baseball team would help his situation. I didn't need to go on and on about athletic medicine to explain why sports help people become healthy. I just wanted him to experience it himself, to realize how great it feels to play sports. I think he realized it gradually. He was reluctant until the very end, but he attended all of the team activities and games. You know, I'm starting to notice something about myself. It's like, be watching this YouTuber, actually, what was the YouTuber's name? CJU Games. I think I stumbled upon his channel years ago and watched it play through his scratches, and I just rediscovered it when I was like, you know what? Scratches. I'm just like randomly interested in that again. It's a point and click horror game. I actually own it, but I have no idea where the freaking hell I put the disc. Because like that's the only way I can freaking play it. Because the company that made it, they went under essentially. So yeah. Anyway, but like, just like the past few videos I've been watching of his, and the old videos as well. And then like when he reads slower, you know, breathes, you know, like he'd be like, I think he realized it gradually. He was reluctant until the very end, but he attended all the team activities and games. But me, I read too fast, and as such, I'm like, oh, breathe, man. And that is why I brought that up, because my God, it's like, along with my rambling, if not for my rambling, I'd read through these way too fast. As I saw Satoshi slowly regain his liveliness, I realized my plan worked. See? Didn't even pause for the commas. That's just the way I read. As a result, I'm like, breathe, man. I know, like lately I've been kind of like, feeling, you know, and it feels like my nose can't breathe through my nose quite as, you know, easily. So like that kind of makes reading for extended time just like, whoever Satoshi-kun was under that much stress. Then Satoko-chan, who lived in the same family climate, must have felt the same way. And now, speaking of, that YouTuber, just like, after just like 20 minutes or so of, well, it probably recorded like more along the lines of an hour, you know, but he doesn't read everything in the game or anything like that. He just like does commentary, occasionally reads if it's not too long. But like in one video he mentioned, like, oh, I'm losing my voice here. So like, and me, I freaking do nearly 2 hour long recordings for this where I'm reading the entire time. No wonder why my voice at the end's like, I live there the same, but I'm in a family climate, must have felt the same way. Fortunately, I didn't think of her back then. So when Satoko-chan was carried into my clinic as a patient, I regretted doing nothing about her even while knowing the situation. Explains why he's so passionate about helping her then. As Satoshi-kun recovered under my guidance, Satoko-chan was left alone in her stressful environment. Also around that time, there was an incident bad enough to make Satoko-chan collapse. That was, of course, her parents' deaths. Okay, we're doing this in a kind of decent order. It's like, previous scenes in this record session were prior to that event. And now it's after that event. The day of the Watanabe Festival was a very uncomfortable time for the Hojo family, because although it was a village festival, it was also a day to celebrate victory over the dam construction project. We've already skipped ahead by at least a year then. It's understandable how they would plan a family trip around that time so they could leave the village. Satoko-chan's parents fell off the cliff at the park they were visiting, so that cliffhanger was very literal. It happened on such an unlucky day, because it happened on the day of Watanabe. People said it was the curse of Oyashiro-sama. People labeled the Hojo family as the one that was cursed by Oyashiro-sama. The parents were given the cold shoulder by everyone in the village. So with their parents gone, Satoshi and Satoko should have been freed from that. But unfortunately, the accident happened on the day of Watanabe. That's why the members of the Hojo family continued to be shunned. Satoko-chan was the only one who was at the site of the accident. Satoshi-kun didn't go on the trip because he had an event with the baseball team. Now that must have played on his mind heavily as well, and therefore the police mainly interrogated her. Detective Irie suspected an act of organized crime by the village, so with Satoko-chan as the only witness on site, he drilled her with questions. You know, sometimes it's like, you know, Irie is like, yeah. With you, Irie, you just want to get it upon me. But Irie, sometimes you're needlessly a complete and utter twat. She was as stressed as Satoshi-kun, perhaps even more, so of course she couldn't take it. During the interrogation, she began to wheeze and gasp for air. The anguished look I saw on Satoko-chan's face when she was carried into the clinic was very, very tragic. It broke my heart just to imagine what she had to go through. Coach, is Satoko okay? I'll tell you this after I take a drink. Yeah, it really is, reading, man. It's like, when I think about it, I recorded for Rune Factory Oceans yesterday. Still haven't edited it. And, it's very different recording, for a video game versus a visual novel, because in a video game, I don't have to be talking every second, more or less. When it comes to a visual novel, in this case, I guess it's a sound novel, but whatever. This constant reading, so I don't get like moments where I'm like, okay, don't need to talk constantly. But no, not the case. It's like the times when I'm not reading is spent rambling. Yes, don't worry, she's a bit confused, but only temporarily, that's all. May I see her? She finally fell asleep, so I'd rather not wake her up just yet. Just let her rest for a while. Maybe it's a good idea to have her stay here for a few days too. Don't worry, I'll take good care of her. Thank you. I know Satoshi-kun is a great big brother who truly cares about his sister. He emphasizes deeply with her. In other words, Satoshi-kun's worries and stress were reflecting Satoko-chan herself. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but while Satoshi-kun was, of course, sad about his parents' deaths, he may, at the same time, have been a little relieved that they were gone. Just a bit fucked up, really. His sister wouldn't have to be driven into a corner anymore. Unlike Satoshi-kun, Satoko-chan didn't have the social skills to get along with her stepfather. So putting her mother aside, it was certain that losing her father, the greatest cause of stress in her life, would bring a great change to her home environment. But I couldn't believe what happened next. The two were sent to live to an even worse environment with their aunt and uncle. Although at that time I was rather optimistic, thinking this new environment would be better for the siblings. Did I accidentally just skip that last bit? I double-clicked enter by accident. So I'm not sure if there was anything else after that. Okay. Wait. Okay, we can do me on. You can probably do that one as well. Wait. So, in a sense, we've got requirement 2, but not requirement 1 yet. What year was it? It was, I think it was the second year, right? Satoko's parents were the second curse, because the first one, I think, is seen as the dam construction guy. Man, I don't know if I can do this for a full near 2 hours, because my voice is already kind of like... Who's speaking? Me understand your friend is here. I hear the housekeeper's voice. At least you thought it was the housekeeper's voice. Our house in the front yard, a huge one like normal houses, ringing a doorbell or yelling my name, repeatedly asking to play won't work. Okay, thank you. Who is it? Rika Friday-chama. Oh, finally, can you tell Granny that Rika-chama's here? I think she's on the porch. I'll get the watermelon. Wait, wasn't there one of our comments mentioned a watermelon? Granny received many beautiful watermelons from somebody, so she wanted to share. I just called the Friday house a short time ago, and Rika-chan is here to pick one up. Did she come on her bicycle? I can't remember if it had a big enough basket. I pulled the watermelon from the well while thinking about that. The cold water in the well has refrigerated the watermelon, and the condensation makes it look delicious. 3 members of the Friday family will enjoy it for at least 2 nights. Meep. Am I supposed to take it home? I thought... What, didn't your dad tell you? The priest answered the phone and I thought I told him to come and pick it up. Maybe I wasn't clear enough, or maybe he misunderstood me completely. But she's here to eat the watermelon, not to take it home. Besides, small basket on Rika-chan's bicycle, I was about to say basketball, won't hold the watermelon. And it's too dangerous for her to ride while holding it in her hands. Mian, why don't you help Rika-chan take the watermelon? There's no way she can ride her bicycle while carrying it. Me, I can hold the watermelon. No, that's too dangerous. Something happened to you. I wouldn't know what to say to Shir-sama. Mian will help you. Okay, well, I'll say hi to the priest too. No matter whether she rides or pushes the bicycle, or Rika-chan's hands will be occupied. So I'm going to carry the watermelon. The sky is turning even in the sunset with a cool breeze feels good on my sandaled feet. This must have been before the club was formed, probably. The plastic bag I'm carrying contains the watermelon. Also some small bags of rock candy. Rock candy was also another requirement. If Hermela finds them, she'll take them away, so we decided to eat them before we got to her home. We opened the bags and enjoyed the rock candy. Rika-chan isn't an exception. Whenever kids from our neighborhood come to our house, parents, Granny gives them some treats. Actually, that's a pretty common rule here in Misawa. It's funny, but sometimes when parents aren't watching, siblings will fight over who gets to take the circular notice to the next house over. So these bags of rock candy are like tips for them. Of course, she doesn't normally give out this much. Usually it's just a little piece of it. Granny's been extra nice to Rika-chan. I feel bad getting all this candy. Don't worry, Granny loves you. You should just spank her and put a big smile on her face, that's all. You get lots of treats. I used to, but hey, at this age they don't give me any. If they did though, I'd probably feel I was being treated like a little kid. Meep. I'm being treated like a child then. That's okay, enjoy it while you can. When it becomes old with me, you won't get any, even if you want some. As we talked about ordinary things, I noticed Rika-chan seemed a little sad. What's wrong? Whenever I run errands, I get candy as a treat. But Satoko doesn't get any even if she comes with me. I can think of so many reasons why. Not only Satoko, but everyone in the Hojo family has been treated poorly in Misawa. And the sons like a family are the ones who instigated that. The 2 damn supporters have died in an accident already. But the malice against the Hojo family is still going. It's directed against Satoko and Satoshi, their children, and the aunt and uncle who are taking care of them. Big fight between the Hojo family and the Sunseki family at the explanatory meeting started all this. That was the Hojo couple, and it shouldn't have anything to do with the children and their aunt and uncle. But the idea that the Hojo family are traitors evolved on its own. Therefore, anyone bearing the Hojo name is to be treated poorly. The aunt and uncle weren't damn supporters, so over time the attack towards them should have stopped. But they're rather odd, and they have been having trouble with their neighbors. Don't follow community rules, they don't do their community duties, and they spray pesticide while the neighbor's laundry is still hanging outside. In other words, even without the whole issue with the Hojo family, those 2 are complete assholes. They often get into fights with the other villagers, they'd be hated even without the dam. Therefore the Hojo family continues to be treated poorly. But none of that should have anything to do with Satoko and Satoshi. Satoko and Satoshi are often depressed at school. I try to leave the conflict between the 2 families aside, but I wonder how they really feel about that. From their point of view, I'm just another member of the family that keeps harassing them. I don't want any of that at school, that's why I try to be their friend while we're there. How can we get that to extend outside too instead of staying in the school? That'd be pretty difficult. The Hojo family made enemies in the 3 families. They were branded as traitors, and that's still considered the truth. Wouldn't mean anything if one person suggested an end to the hostilities just because the events around the dam are history now. On the contrary, that would just put them in the same position. Unfortunately for Satoko and Satoshi, the only thing they can do is to wait patiently until the issue whips away. All I can do for them is provide an oasis until that day comes. So how long do they have to wait? I don't know, the dam conflict lasted for several years. They were branded back then, so it might take years to clear up too. Do you mean they won't be forgiven until they become adults? Will Satoko have to live out her childhood going through that? What was with the way I said adults? That's pretty miserable, isn't it? Me. We are their friends, aren't we? Sure, they're my friends. We're all buddies. Then isn't there something we can do to help our friends? What exactly can we do? Even if the Sunseki family declares that the dam conflict is over, so the Hojo family are no longer outcasts, that won't solve the problem. It's not that simple. In the first place, Granny hates the Hojo family and won't suffer their name to be mentioned in her presence. It's not a matter of someone forgiving another. It's a matter of very complicated ties between the people in this village. It's absolutely terrifying to have them as your enemies. Everyone knows that very well, and that's why they maintain good relationships with their neighbors. However, if you make enemies out of them, you'll have to face consequences. That's the unwritten law of the Japanese community. So it's like, if you make enemies, you will get neighbors from hell. I can kind of relate to Satoko and Satoshi in a way, because growing up back in the day, family had fallen out and neighbors from hell had to move and everything. It was really shit situation. And I was probably around Satoshi's age. No, actually, I was might have actually been around Satoko's age even, maybe a little older. So yeah, that definitely had an impact on me mental health wise. It's like, shit like that is just fucked, you know? Fuck that kind of shit, you know? Just like, people don't really think of the consequences of the impact it'll have on people and shit. I just it's not a part of, it's just I can relate, essentially, and the Sunseki family is a part of this unwritten law. Now that the Hojo family are outcasts, not even the Sonozaki family can overturn the situation. It feels a bit weird after it's going over that. But yeah, I did have neighbors from hell. And I was probably around that age, so yeah, that definitely affected me, you know. It's like, that's probably like where a lot of the anxiety comes into play. So even if it's an issue of Inbizawa, we can't do anything about it as Inbizawa residents. Who's talking now? Oh, that's probably Rika then. So even if it's an issue of Inbizawa, we can't do anything about it as Inbizawa residents. Unfortunately, that's probably so, yeah. If there's someone who can help Satoko, that person must be someone who has nothing to do with the village. There's no one like that here. There is? We've seen someone from outside the village has to come help her. Like Rika-chan says, would a knight in shining armor from the outside world ever come here? Would that person bring in a new wind into the village that has been filled with stale air for hundreds of years? And would that man's name, well, boy's name be Keiichi Maibara? No way. That's just wishful thinking. Time will solve the problem someday. Till then, I have to be their ally. I can't think of anything else I can do for them. As Rika-chan and I crunched on our rock candy, we can only pray that people will forgive Satoko and her family sooner rather than later. Rika-chan gently broke the heavy silence. I know. Eh? I know someone who has absolutely nothing to do with the village who will come here from the outside. That's right, the damn conflict is over, so it'd be great if more people moved into those lots that are for sale. Wouldn't it be fun if a family with a kid our age moved in? He will come, I know, and we'll break this evil practice alongside him. That'll be the first key to one of the free locks that have us trapped in the past. Eh? What's this? Are you talking about a novel or something? Maybe a sound visual novel? Eh? Rika-chan says some odd things sometimes. When she talks that way, she seems so mature. I even start to doubt she's really younger than I am. The unreasonable antagonism towards the Hojo family. Will there really be someone from the outside who will shatter our old traditions? So, we haven't even got that one yet. We got the watermelon though. Did we get a red capsule? I'm not sure. Now we got a first one. Yeah. Have we got our test result? I think not. I'm not sure. Haven't got that. You know, because, you know, the time skip, you know, is past the point where the damn, you know, construction site manager is deaf. But we haven't seen it in a scene. So I'm not sure. I feel like we still need to see that scene before that. Let's see if we can get a roll of 1. Actually, now, We haven't got giraffes. Never mind. How about this one? Yeah, we got this. I wanted to become a doctor ever since I was little. Doctors make a lot of money and people look up to doctors. I think those are the kind of reasons I had. So when I played with my friends, I always acted like a doctor. I cleaned their wounds and applied ice packs when my friends sprained their ankles using what I learned from household medical books. Everyone, including me, believed that I'd be a doctor one day. My family was poor, so they praised me for that goal. They told me that I needed to study a lot to become a doctor, so they borrowed some pseudo-medical books from the local library for me. Pseudo, not exactly the best word to have there. Just like, oh yeah, you're studying pseudo-medical books, rather than just, proper medical books. The rental fees weren't cheap. So I would speed read one book in a day, and the next day my parents would go back to the store to exchange it for a different book, saying they accidentally borrowed a book they already borrowed before. By doing so, my parents borrowed 2 books for the price of 1. Of course, now I know those books were all useless, but they were highly motivational just the same. My neighbors called me Dr. Kyosuke-kun, and I was always picked for class health officer at school. Even my teachers helped me with the classes I needed to take to become a doctor. Of course, in reality, becoming a doctor isn't as easy as it might seem. Well, no shit. I had to study diligently, and the path was most definitely rough. To become a doctor, one must attend college. Since my family was poor, I was told I wasn't allowed to go to an expensive private school. So I had to be admitted to a national public university. My grades weren't bad, but the admission rate to national public universities is very marginal. Especially since I wanted to go to a medical school, my chances were even smaller. I studied like crazy. My only driving force was my childhood dream of becoming a doctor. The dream of becoming a doctor and to be looked up to by everyone kept me going. And I was admitted. I wasn't at the top of the list, but I made it in. I was finally at the starting point of making my childhood dream come true. My parents were thrilled. Neither my father nor mother went to college, so they were proud of their son getting into a public medical school. They invited our relatives over to celebrate. Though it was a public university, tuition wasn't cheap, but they still had an extravagant celebration anyway. My father didn't express his emotion much. He always kept a straight face. He rarely voiced his opinion or took initiative on anything. My mother took care of everything, and he showed up last and left without saying a word. He was a typical stern and silent Japanese father of the time. That's why I was surprised to see him shedding tears of joy, and I cried along with him. He went around to all my relatives while repeatedly slapping my back, saying how proud and lucky he was to have a son like me. Bragged about my achievements to all who would hear them. Celebration became my farewell party as I was about to leave for Tokyo. My father yelled "Banzai!" repeatedly at the station as the train pulled away. I was a little embarrassed. When I could no longer see my father, I could clearly recall the tears pouring down. The days of hellish study and exams began after that. Some days I was tempted to just give up and submit myself to the lavish lifestyle of the city. But the letters from my family always encouraged me and gave me the strength to go on. My dream then was to open up my own clinic in my hometown so I could contribute to the region. I never even dreamed of getting involved with brains. It's kind of admirable though, It's like, it wants it's not just like, in it to just become a doctor and all that. He also wants to give back to his hometown. One day, the music stopped and I noticed a difference in a letter from my family. The letter said the usual things about how it was at home and asked how I was doing. But the postscript was what caught my attention. Your father has become really violent lately. Sometimes he turns the house upside down and I don't know what to do. I just couldn't picture him acting viciously. I was extremely surprised. Did something happen? In the postscript, my mother said that there was nothing she could think of. This is probably what inspired him to, study brains. Because, He wanted to, figure out, there's got to be a way of resolving mental issues via surgery of some sort. My mother and father had been together for a long time. I did read that last time, right? Yeah. The best you could think of. They'd been together since well before I was born. So she noticed things that I couldn't. She couldn't even think of the reason why my father had become so violent. What happens? They got along so well, they were such a lovely couple. When I caused a problem for my mother when I was little, my father only bonked my head with his knuckle. Why was he acting this way towards my mother? Maybe there was some kind of misunderstanding between them. I was going home for the new year. Maybe I could have a good talk with him then. But the situation was a lot more serious than I thought. On one cold winter day, I found my apartment door unlocked. I thought someone had broke in, but I found my mother in my apartment with her luggage. That's right, my mother could no longer take my father's ferry and came to stay with me. This was back when people still believed in the proverb, a woman has no place to settle down all her life. She couldn't go back to her own family because they lived in the same region as my father, so she came all the way to Tokyo. I heard about my father's violence from my mother's own lips. She cried, saying she had no idea why such a quiet man changed like that. Said she wasn't even going back to him. I didn't know what to do. I asked her if I could talk to him one more time, but the bruise on our body told me it was no use. To remember what happened afterwards is too much, so I'll be brief. After my mother left, my father thought she was having an affair and went over to the neighbor's house with a wooden sword. He was arrested. Well, that escalated. He was released immediately, but he assumed someone in the neighborhood was hiding her, so he did the same thing repeatedly. He eventually reached the point of getting into fights with anyone he saw. At the end, he picked a fight with some young bunks and ended up being beaten to death. Well, that also escalated quickly. My relatives gave my father a decent funeral, but my mother didn't attend. It's no use beating a dead horse. Or, I suppose. So nobody said anything negative about my father, but everyone was simply puzzled as to why he changed so much. What I heard from my relatives about my father's final days was a lot stranger than what I heard from my mother. My mother only told me about his sudden rage and violence. But my relatives told me he also laughed and grew sad. Apparently he displayed several sudden fluctuations of emotion, especially so in his last years. He also told me that he started to complain about headaches after an accident he had. Yeah, that explains it. Obviously, he suffered a head injury, and that's altered his personality. My father was a construction worker. He had hit his head... Yeah, I'd figured as much. He hit his head hard on a construction board during an accident at work. He regained his consciousness quickly and seemed fine. But since the accident, he started to have headaches and behave abnormally. I sensed a connection between the accident and my father's changes, so I talked to my professor after I went back to Tokyo. I can't say for certain, but it sounds like it's possible your father suffered some kind of brain damage. There's a chance that blow to his head caused an organic mental disorder. The symptoms your father showed in his final days are similar to the delirium and mental fluctuations we've often seen in similar patients. What is that condition called? I see something. It's like, related to, repeated concussions that damages the brain, severely. Human behavior is created by the brain. If the brain is damaged, it can cause erratic behavior. In other words, my father wasn't crazy, he was suffering from a disorder. If you can perform an autopsy on him, you should check his brain carefully. Maybe you'll find something like a tumor there. My father had already been cremated, so there was no way of knowing. Be a bit morbid if he actually could do that. But hearing about his behavior, I knew for sure. That was the only way to explain why such a quiet and gentle man would change. Tried to explain all this to my relatives to regain my father's honor, but hardly anyone understood. If his brain was damaged, he would have been dead. But he was alive and well. So the accident didn't damage his brain. It wasn't his brain that caused him to change, it was his mind. Simply brushed it off like that. It's like, I can't remember what it was called, but it's like one case that stands in my mind. It's definitely athletes get it quite a bit. Seems all prominent there. Makes sense because of the head injuries. But the wrestler Chris Benoit, who nowadays just kind of look back on and just be like, well, he essentially killed his son and wife and then himself. But from like what they could like look into, like, you know, the brain and all that, could see that obviously severely brain damaged and had like, I think I remember reading something like about like he had the mind of like an elderly patient with like high dementia or something like that, and that probably, even if he hadn't have killed himself, he would have been dead by the end of the year from it. It's just like the brain is very fragile. This is a perception most people have about the brain. And then his mind is simply brushed off like that. They don't realize the mind and the brain are connected. Most of the relatives didn't believe me. But there was one person who I really wanted to, anyway. That was my mother. As she got older, she grew senile and she exaggerated the abuse she had to endure. All she did was criticize my father. And every time, she ended up crying, lamenting that she married him. They were a lovely couple. They were a great family. That's why I wanted to convey to her that she was misunderstanding the situation with my father. My father's behavior was caused by his brain damage. What he did to her was very sad, but he didn't want to be that way. I told her that he wasn't at fault. But my mother didn't understand. Before she took her last breaths, I begged her to forgive my father. But her final words were, "Please don't bury me next to that man." My father wasn't at fault. He was simply the victim of a brain disorder. You don't complain to a person who's coughing because he has a cold. Because coughing is just a symptom and he should be sympathized with. In my father's case, symptoms weren't as obvious as a cough. They looked formal changes in personality which are much harder to recognize. You know, you use that as an example. It's like, oh yeah, you can sympathize with someone who's coughing because they've got a cold. And then people are like, stay the fuck away from me, man. It's like, that's no sympathy, man. If I had studied the brain more, I could have explained it better to my mother so that she could have understood him. Then they could have been a nice couple again in heaven. When I realized that, I cried. And I also realized that there are plenty of people like my father in this world who are suffering from a disorder, yet they are misunderstood and despised for it. And then I found out. About a miraculous cure for such disorders called a lobotomy. Ironically, lobotomy would have the potential to cause that very situation, because that's what it's more or less doing. You're poking at the brain, you're pretty much damaging it. Ever since that day, I spent my days learning about the brain so I could help people who are suffering from mental illnesses. My father is gone, but if he was still alive, I could cure him myself, so he and my mother could reconcile. That's the main reason why I'm here. So he switched to research, becoming a doctor when it comes to brains and shit, rather than just in general after that event. Well, that explains his backstory perfectly then. Question is, what next?